We begin this morning with the shutdown standoff now in its fourth day. Dueling short-term spending bills have failed in the Senate again yesterday, dragging the shutdown into next week. Plus, the House canceled votes for the next week and won't return until October 14th. More than 750,000 federal workers are currently on furlough, and President Trump has renewed threats that firings and project cuts could follow as the shutdown continues.
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault. And it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place.
This week, Russell Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, said firings could come in, quote, 1 or 2 days. That's despite the Washington Post reporting that inside the White House, officials have warned that plan could violate appropriation laws, according to two people familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive internal deliberations. In the meantime, the White House continued its blatant effort to maximize pain for the president's political foes and blue states and cities. Yesterday, Vought announced a freeze on more than $2 billion in infrastructure projects for Chicago, just days after announcing a similar freeze on billions for projects in New York City. In the meantime, Democrats continue to stress their opposition to any measure that cuts health care for millions of Americans and blasted House Speaker Johnson for canceling votes next week.
Johnson and House Republicans care more about protecting the Epstein files than protecting the American people.
I think there is not a clear illustration of their lack of seriousness in terms of reopening the government and solving the health care crisis.
Joining us now, Emily Davies, White House reporter for The Washington Post, and Michael Schnell, MSNBC congressional reporter. Emily, Michael, welcome to the weekend. All right, Michael, can you please explain to me why House Speaker Johnson, if what they're saying is Democrats need to provide the votes to reopen the government, why isn't he bringing his people back? Why aren't they bringing them back?
So we've asked this to Speaker Mike Johnson a number of times. I've asked him myself. The argument he's making is that House Republicans actually already did their job. He's saying House Republicans got together along with just one House Democrat. We passed this continuing resolution without any policy riders, and we sent it over to the Senate. So they're essentially arguing that because they already passed that bill over the finish line, there's nothing else they want to do. Now, that's what they're saying, but what's the strategy behind it? Right. Johnson's essentially trying to pressure Senate Democrats to get behind this continuing resolution, because without having them in town, it appears that that is the only option to reopen the government. If they were in town, you can have more of an argument to have some negotiations, maybe craft a new bill, ping pong that bill back to the House to make an approval. Johnson's trying to play hardball here by not bringing them back. He's saying take it or leave it with that House passed bill.
Emily, President Trump and the entire White House feel like they are going to win this one politically, right? Obviously, the American people are losing. I want to play some sound from President Trump over the years in 2018 and 2011 about who's responsible when the government shut down.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck.
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the President of the United States.
Well, how would you do it now? No, you're in the Oval Office right now.
I would get everybody
Wednesday
together, and we'd have a budget, and it would
They've
get
all
done.
gotten together.
Well, that's because they don't have the right leader. You don't have the right leader. This is the President of the United States has to get this done.
In a new poll by you guys, 47% of Americans say they will blame Trump and the GOP in Congress, who's mainly responsible for the government shutdown. In the White House, you know, they project a lot of, like, you know, bravado and feeling very calm. Is that actually how they're feeling in the building? Do they actually feel like we need an off-ramp here?
I think there are, from my conversations this week, there are a number of people inside the White House who really do feel that way, who feel like this is a winning issue for them. They've brought immigration to the center of it, and they feel that that is an issue that they pull well on, they've always pulled well on. somebody described it to me as their bread and butter. So here they are leaning into that issue, hoping it will really work for them. But, we reported this week that there are concerns about the legal strategy of some of what they're trying to do here. There are certainly people who know that health care really matters to their base, and so it's a risk in that way. I had one GOP operative who's close to the White House describe polling on this issue to me as a live wire. So it just really changes, and it's hard to get the pulse of what's really resonating with people on the ground.
Yeah. Emily, actually, I want to stay on some of that reporting you did about federal senior officials quietly counseling the White House against firing employees, as Russ Vought has promised to do, which would essentially be a continuation of what they've already been doing since the start of this administration. But what is the status of these threats to fire federal workers? And do you feel like this counsel to stay away from doing this, since the strategy, as you reported, could violate appropriations law, is resonating with officials at the White House?
They haven't changed their tune on it at all. All week they've been previewing these firings. They said, officials were saying, from Trump to Caroline Leavitt, everybody was saying it could happen as soon as yesterday, as Friday. We haven't actually seen the firings yet, but when we've seen in the last few months this tug of war between legal concerns and a desire of the president does often win out. But, we haven't seen them yet.
And to be very clear, they don't have to fire anyone. The thing that the White House continues to say is that, the Democrats are forcing us to fire people, because what are we going to do when it's shut down? That's not true. That's not ever how it has happened before, just to be very clear, everybody watching.
Right. And can we also level set, Michael, because I just want to put up this headline from Government Executive from June of this year. Trump is planning to slash 107,000 federal jobs next year. That is in his FY26 budget. And I bring that up because Russell Vought, the director of OMB, is threatening to fire hundreds of thousands of federal employees, as if that's some kind of threat they haven't already put out there. And since we're talking about Russell Vought, I want to show this video of what Russell Vought had to say about federal workers and how they should be treated. Just look at this from 2023 and then 2024.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. We want to put them in trauma.
We have to solve the woke and the weaponized bureaucracy and have the president take control of the executive branch. There's certainly going to be mass layoffs and firings, particularly across some of the agencies that we don't even think should exist.
And Michael, I wanted to play that because I want to know how much is those statements, past statements from Russell Vought, playing into how Democrats are approaching their role in the shutdown.
So the part about the threat of mass firings, I think, has been such a fascinating dynamic in this whole shutdown situation. As you mentioned, unconventional, right? We usually see those furloughs, but these mass layoffs is not something we typically see in shutdowns. So I think the thought among several Republicans was that if we threaten these mass layoffs, Democrats are going to get really nervous. That's going to pressure some of those moderate Democrats in the Senate, some of those vulnerable Democrats. Because again, it only takes 5 more. That's not a huge number. I think a lot of folks were thinking that if Democrats hear this threat of more layoffs, which they have been up in arms about with DOJ throughout the first, 8 months of the Trump administration, 9 months, that will then lead enough to cower under that pressure and vote in favor of that Republican.
And it hasn't turned out that way.
And it hasn't happened. And we've asked Democrats about this a number of times, particularly Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader. He said this is more of the same. Look, for months now, Trump has been laying off workers. He has been threatening to do more. That's been led by DOJ. Russ Vought has been saying things that they're not scared by this threat. And that's why we haven't really seen a different dynamic. But when we talk about all these off ramps to potentially end a shutdown, I think a lot of folks were thinking in the back of their head, one of those escape hatches could be enough Democrats getting nervous about this threat of layoffs. That's just not happening, which is so fascinating.
Wait, hold on. Because I want to understand, just so that people understand more of the dynamic, how significant is it that a moderate senator like Patty Murray of Washington State is firmly on the side of I'm not voting to reopen the government.
Or John Ossoff, who is the most endangered Senate Democrat.
Yeah, I think this sort of brings you to toy with, well, what is the base asking for? Because we remember what happened in March. That's another fascinating dynamic of this shutdown fight, is that we sort of have a test run of what could have happened if the things went the other way. It's like in golf, if you hit a shot on the green, the first person who hits can see how the shot is going to roll on the green. We saw how the shot rolled on the green back in March when Chuck Schumer and other Senate Democrats caved and voted with Republicans to keep the government open, and their base was so frustrated, so angry. There were questions about if Chuck Schumer would retain his job. So I think that having that previous knowledge and understanding of what happened if they take the other side of the fork in the road, that's why we're now seeing these Democrats go with this way. And it is fascinating, and it's unconventional that you'd see some of these moderate Democrats do it, but I think it has a lot to do with what the base has been asking for the past 8 months.
I love that call.
And also, the Democrats were blindsided by how Republicans have acted since March, right? Allowing the White House to claw back funds, for one, right?
Rescission.
Mr. Rescission's here. Not going along with trying to figure out more bipartisanship. I guess they thought that they would, things were going to happen. Someone described it to me as, sometimes Democrats need to be spit in the face by Republicans for things to actually get some, gall.
Is that the word you were going for?
No, that's not. But it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Emily, when we talk about the off-ramps, one of the things that Pete Aguilar, one of the leaders in the House Democrats, told us last week is that he and a lot of other Democrats aren't voting unless the health care is a part of this bill. Have you heard anything from folks in the White House about President Trump or any of the folks that are doing the negotiating here saying, look, we promise to get to this healthcare issue before December as a way to give everyone an off-ramp here?
Yeah, Vice President J.D. Vance surprised us in the press briefing room this week, and part of what he said stressed that Democrats had some good ideas when they came to the table. And that has been like a company line this week. And it seems like from what people have said, that's referring to health care. So it's leaving the door open that could be a compromise. The question is about when. But we saw yesterday Senate Majority Leader Thune kind of back off that, saying maybe there's not enough Republican support to even get that across the finish line. But from the White House, it does seem that President Trump and his top staff are interested in health care once the government is open and they sort of get this win.
And Emily, I want to pick up on that quickly before we end, because Trump's own pollster, Tony Fabrizio, was briefing Republicans over the summer about how this issue of extending the subsidies was, by broad margins, something that voters, including their own voters, wanted to see. Tax credits extended rather than expire at the end of the year, whether in the context of premiums doubling or 5 million families losing their health insurance. Michael, when you were talking with Republicans, not just on the Senate side, but on the House side, who we know that Fabrizio was also briefing Republicans on this over the summer, not just people in the White House. Did this message land at all? Do you feel like behind closed doors people realize that this could be a losing issue for them going into 2026?
It's not even really behind closed doors. It's sort of in public, too. There's a bill that's sponsored by Congresswoman Jen Kagan. She's a Republican. Right. She's leading the charge on a one-year extension to these ACA subsidies. It has more than 10 Republican co-sponsors, a number of those folks who are in some of those vulnerable districts, some of those purple districts, moderate Republicans. It's just not by and large the vast majority, and it's not the leadership of the party that is so keen on extending these subsidies without having a conversation. I like the line Emily used. The company line from Republican leadership has said, open the government now, and we'll talk about this later. We've heard Speaker Johnson say and others say that there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the Obamacare subsidies program, that they want to take a look at it and reform it and make it better. There's been a lot of conversation about maybe income caps on that program. So certainly for a lot of Republicans, they're not just on face of it, no, I don't want to do this. A lot of them want to have a conversation about it, but of course that timeline and the way of handling it does not jibe with what Democrats.
And also, most of them don't believe in expanding those subsidies. Steve Daines from Montana was on TV this week being like, I'm not interested in this, so y'all can go ahead and move on.
Well, Emily, obviously Vice President Vance has said they're not going to negotiate until Democrats reopen the government. Are there conversations happening, though? Are negotiations? Is J.D. Vance going to the Capitol at all? What are we missing here?
It's been quiet from the White House side in the last 2 days, I would say, in terms of any meetings with people on the Hill that we've had access to. They're saying that, the Republicans on the Hill are doing their bidding for them. Russ Vought is really doing the plans for layoffs. Like, they are trying to, it seems like, control and steer the messaging while leaving the details to the people that they trust.
Michael Schnell, Emily Davies, thanks so much for joining us this morning.